We are so excited to be with you. What a joy that brothers and sisters from 4 Lausanne regions, the Middle East, North Africa, Francophone Africa, EPSA will be together in this room. It's historic and we are very grateful. Last, Tanya and myself have just a few minutes to be with you. And we are looking primarily at 2 things. The 3 of us report to Dave Bennett, who shared the bigger vision of Lausanne and where we're going to with you yesterday. We represent 3 specific departments, and we will tell you what we do in our departments, and then the specific invitation is to share with you how we are contributing to the Lausanne L4 process and how relevant that is to the 4 regions that are here. So let me invite Las, our gentleman from Jamaica, to tell us about the Lausanne regions.
Thank you, Nana. And hello, everyone. It's good to see you all, and nice to be here in this gathering. Well, the Lausanne movement is structured in regions, and of course, generations and the issue networks, which you will hear about. There are 12 global regions that comprise the global Lausanne movement. Here we are in Africa, and we're having a Pan-Africa region. As you heard from Nana, 4 sub-regions of Africa are meeting as Africa, as the continent of Africa in this. But of course we have Asia, and Asia has 3 regions, East Asia and Southeast Asia and South Asia. We have Latin America, we have Eurasia, we have Europe, we have the Caribbean, we have Oceania, or what we used to call the South Pacific regions, and so on. So there are 12 regions. Each region is coordinated by a regional director and a co-regional director and a team. And Gideon has just thanked the regional directors for the 4 regions of Africa that have brought us here. So what do we do in regions? One of the things we do is we bring people together. We've brought you all together here to consult with one another, to share your stories, to hear from one another, and to have dialogue and to be encouraged by what God is doing across our nations, in our regions, and to not just to bless us, but to encourage us and to strengthen us. We hear about the issues of persecution, and what is happening in Africa is happening in other regions as well. I've just come from India, where we had a missions conference. There were 342 missions groups, missions organizations in India that gathered together for their missions conference. And one of the things they talked about was persecution in India, which you may have heard about in the state of Manipur, in Orissa, in North India, and so on. Christians are suffering just as they are in Africa and elsewhere in the world, in China, and so on. So one of the good things about the regions is that it brings awareness of what God is doing, how he's moving at work. Gideon talked about the missionary force, the way the church is growing in Africa, church is growing in India, the church is growing in Eurasia, in Latin America, the Caribbean, and so on. So regions are at the heart of the Lausanne movement. This is where we live, this is where we move, this is where we have our being. We live in the countries, we live in regions. This is where Lausanne is impacting on the ground. Tanya.
And there are 27 issue networks of the Lausanne movement, and they have their roots in the Cape Town commitment that they were formed after the 3rd Congress with leadership that was established in the form of catalysts to carry out the calls to action and to make sure they were implemented. And at that time, since Cape Town, issue networks were added to regions as an organizational focus for the movement. With the call in this L4 season to accelerate global mission together, each of the issue networks continue to build on the theological and missiological foundations of the Cape Town movement commitment. And they serve as strategic points of connection and collaboration as global networks led by teams of globally representative leaders. And if you're wondering what these 27 networks are, you can find them in the Skooks app under booths, and they have full descriptions. And I just want to invite you and encourage you to learn about the networks that are under the Lausanne movement. And we also have some catalysts or some leaders of these networks with us this week at the gathering.
Thank you, Lars and Tanya. Briefly, the Lausanne Generations department focuses on two key things. Number one is long-term strategic investing into Christ-following younger leaders for the global church and every sector of society. When I say younger leaders, I'm not talking about young people. Younger leaders influence young people. Secondly, we have heard so much about generational gaps here. Since 1974, the Lausanne movement has been investing in younger leaders. For our dear brothers who came from North Africa, you might know Ramesh Atela. He was the youngest speaker at the Lausanne 74 Congress, now such a huge influential leader across the world. The second thing we do in the Generations Department since 2016 is what we frame as connecting across generations. And we will speak much more about that. So keep that phrase, connecting across generations, which is one of the key gaps we have identified here. You know that the L4 process, which we heard about from Dave Bennett yesterday, is looking all the way to 2050. And I want to invite Lars again to share a little bit about how the regions are contributing specifically to the L4 process, and if there are any connections with the four regions here, that would be great.
Well, absolutely. The L4, Lausanne 4, refers to the fourth Congress. Next year, 2024, Lausanne will be celebrating 50 years. It's the Jubilee year since 1974. And 4 congresses have been held over that period of time. Dave Bennett may have talked about that last night. And for the 4th Congress, we refer to as L4. It's a multi-year process. It's not just an event. People don't just show up in Seoul, Korea, and say, here we are, let's have a conference. It's a multi-year. We started in 2020 during the pandemic, and every year we've been building. 2023, here we are. And what have we done in 2023? We've had all 12 regions engage in a regional gathering such as we're doing here right now. At this moment. So all 12 regions, just over a week ago, we were with the European region. There are 40 or 41 countries that comprise Europe as a region. 37 countries in Europe gathered for the European gathering just over a week ago. And it was fascinating to see Western Europe, Northern Europe, Southern Europe, Central Europe, how they gathered together. And they sat around tables just as we have there, Slovakia over here, Norway over there, and so on and so forth, right around the room. And they were talking to each other. They were discussing the 5 questions that Dave Bennett may have mentioned, which is part of the process that we've all been engaged in. Every region, my region in the Caribbean, we had to do our gathering in July. Every region had to respond to the same 5 questions. So if you've had the questions and you've had your discussions and your breakout sessions and so on, you are engaging in part of that journey that we call the L4 journey. And all of this is contributing to the program for Seoul, Korea in 2024 and beyond. So what comes out of these consultations, what comes out of these listening moments, when we listen to each other and we're documenting what we're saying as regions, as groups, as nations, we're talking about what God is doing through us and among us in the church, in the regions, because all of this is to advance the Great Commission. And what is that? In fact, in the MENA region, during the time of their listening call as a region, there was a pastor from North Africa who asked a very interesting question. And you know what his question was? He may have said it in jest, but it was a very profound question. The question was, what is so great about the Great Commission? That's something that you should think about. Why do we call it the Great Commission? And why are we in the world to discuss the gaps in fulfilling the Great Commission? And what are the opportunities that are before us as regions? Jesus says, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. We know there's a lot of prevailing forces against the church, but the church will prevail. That's what Jesus says. So all of this is contributing to our L4 process.
Thank you, Les. I'd like to highlight three unique contributions of issue networks through this L4 process, and I'll try to do it as briefly as possible because we're coming toward the end. But the first thing that issue networks offer is they provide insight and expertise. So because issue networks are specializing in varied topics, and they provide a focused lens through which Lausanne can understand specific issues. Through research, data collection, experiential wisdom, the issue networks contribute vital insights that would otherwise have extensive resources to garner independently. But because we are coming together for this, we're able to provide these insights. And as Dave mentioned last night, leaders from Africa and the Middle East are contributing and have contributed extensively to this insight and expertise up till now, and we expect and anticipate that will continue. The second thing that issue networks offer is facilitating collaboration. Lausanne has a diverse community. It goes across regions and denominations and generations, as we've been speaking, and issue networks offer kind of a nexus for like-minded individuals to collaborate and engage in these specialized missions issues. And we're not just talking, but they're also operational units that can pilot initiatives and respond to challenges and offer real-world solutions. And so the call of L4 and the opportunity through the listening process and the State of the Great Commission report is for more of the global church to be more engaged in more effective collaboration. And I believe the networks are already kind of engaging that, and so they're especially positioned to do that. And the final thing is a phrase that you might have heard in a number of places, but issue networks identify gaps and also they create opportunities. And so in this sense, our vision is both future and growth oriented. So they've served this in the past, but really we're looking to build resilient and adaptive networks that are ready to engage with the challenges towards 2050, and we want to also grow. So the number 27 is not a special number. It's been less, it's been more, but we want to see networks that are catalyzed out of this listening process, out of the work that you're doing together, that can engage with the issues that are important to you and to the global church, and as we come together.
If you are here at this gathering and you are not connected to your Lausanne region or some issue network, I hope that you will decide to do so. When it comes to generations, we think 2050. 98% of all the younger leaders with Lausanne now will be 57 years and above in 2050. Think about that. We are thinking younger and younger so that global mission will be sustained. The biggest contribution you could make from your regions, from your issue networks, is recommending which younger leaders you see God raising up to lead in the churches, locally, global. There is no church building in Algeria, I heard from my dear brother Murad. It's very difficult to identify strategic younger leaders from some of the regions represented here. The next gathering is 2026. If you are a leader from one of these 4 regions, who are the most strategic younger leaders God is raising to lead his church into the future, please recommend them. Strategic focusing. Number 2, our gathering here represents a unique opportunity in global mission. If all the statistics we are hearing from the presentations are true, then gathered here in this room, we have the sub-Saharan African region with the large Christian population numbers right there intersecting with some of the most difficult, least reached regions of the world. Can we have a 25-year vision of connecting the younger leaders between 25 and 35 in this room, program team, to begin to think how we bridge North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, North Africa, Middle East? Only God knows what will happen if we are able to do that. Thirdly, connect across generations. You may have heard about multi-generations. I will say to you, if the younger ones are present, it doesn't mean they are participating. You may hear about cross generations. Comparing generations is not solving the problem of tensions. Across generations, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, we heard earlier today, every generation has something to contribute. Will we go from L4AM with a commitment that every team you have will be intergenerational? That there will be intergenerational representations on your board? That leadership will be we doing it together. I normally tell people, if you want to think about the 3 departments of Lausanne this way, think about disciples among nations, think about the key things we need to teach on discipleship in the issues, and think about the promise till the end of age in generations. Thank you.